For me, I can just tell you what I think, but hey, what does Zoe know? You know what I mean? So
What does Zoe know?
I wanted to talk about marriage. I've heard so many different stories about people being married and through divorces and happy marriages, bad marriages, marriages out of convenience. And I'm just wondering, is marriage outdated? Is the concept that we grew up with and heard about over hundreds of years, is that concept still relevant today? Because it seems, as long as I've been alive, it seems like the marriage rate has hovered around 50, 60% of people married, and the divorce rate is getting up there to almost 50%. And you're wondering, is a marriage worth it? Are people getting into a marriage situation understanding what it is? When I think about marriage, I think about your typical, the visions of the wedding, the family, and, the husband and wife are supposed to be happy. You go through hard times and you go through good times, and it's for better or for worse. And so many times I'm seeing too much of the worst, too much of it, and it leads people to just go their own separate ways. Sometimes they go their separate ways, and it's mental. They're going their separate ways, but physically they're still there. And is that really a marriage? Sure, you're together physically, but if there is no genuine bond or the desire to be one, do you really call it a marriage, or is it something else? It's becoming more clear to me that the term marriage just simply refers to a legal document, the license, the certificate that you have to say, hey, we're together legally. And it's in essence, it's a contract. And I'm always wondering, who does this contract benefit? Does it benefit the man? Does it benefit the woman? And in our society today, you can say, does it benefit person A or person B, depending on how they identify when they call themselves a couple in a union of marriage. But I'm going to just speak more so to the traditional categories and identification labels, man and woman. That's why I can speak more to and know more about men and women. So, for the woman, I believe that back in the day, when women had less rights, less autonomy of themselves, they more desired to be married to a man because it gave them protection, it gave them a provider, supposedly it gave them a sense of security having that union. And the laws seem to have been more weighted towards the woman when it came to the things that she was allowed to be compensated for when the marriage no longer worked. And and it had to be dissolved. Because in those times, women didn't have anything, didn't have much of anything if they didn't have a husband. It's almost like they didn't have any value if they weren't connected to a man that they said that it was their husband and who they had their kids with, and that was they gained their value through the man, and that's how it's been for so long. Even in the sense, when you're talking about belonging, when a couple were married back then, the woman would take the man's last name. And this is for the purposes of society to understand who that woman belonged to. So she may have been birthed with the family name of Johnson, but once she got married, she became a Dillon or Roberts or Stevenson, whatever that man's last name was. She became his. It was his property at that point. That's my wife. Right? So that's what it benefited the woman to have a husband like that. And then that's traditionally we just continue to carry it on and continue and continue and continue with just that understanding and that kind of framework to move forward. And I think as society has evolved and women have become more independent, more able to stand on their own outside of a man's validation. They've been able to kind of call their own shots to an extent. Almost, I mean, and this is just in recent history that has happened, but they're still raised with the traditional thinking that I have to be married, I have to belong to someone, and if I don't, what am I here for? Because you hear so many women, they're always talking about they're on the clock when it comes to a baby, or when they're on the clock when it comes to, oh, you're not married yet? Like, what's taking so long? And when I'm hearing this, a lot of women are getting offended by that. And they're understanding that in this day and time, I don't have to have a husband in order for me to matter, in order for me to be valuable. If I have a child and I'm not married, my child is still valuable. I'm still valuable. We don't have to have a husband, right? But you see, now that people are getting married still with the same old type of concept to it, you find that a lot of times it's not working. It is not working. The benefit for the man is what in a marriage? He has someone home every day, one takes care of the house. This is ideally when he gets. I'm actually trying to think of being married with a guy, in a guy's perspective. What does he gain from signing that contract, for being in that deal? What does he get? What is his benefit that he cannot gain outside of the marriage? What is it? Well, we know what he can lose if that deal doesn't go right. A lot of times he can lose his kids, lose his property, lose his money. Now, what does the woman lose? Maybe I need a woman to come in and give some feedback on that end of what a woman loses when she decides to end a marriage. because we're finding out through the statistics that women are mainly the ones who are filing for the divorces. Kind of makes sense when you win, in my opinion, you win when you get a divorce. Once you get that man to get down on his knee and say, "Will you be my wife?" and she agrees to that, for all intents and purposes, she has won at that point. And just the way the system has made it come out in the wash that way. It's not too many instances where I've heard of people divorcing and a man wins. And it shouldn't be about a win or loss thing, but the fact is you have some tangible things that are gained and lost. So, in respect to that, we'll just keep it at that. There's some wins, there are some gains and some losses. I won't say wins or losses, just gains and losses. Things you gain and some things you lose. It's just how it is. And it has to be outdated now, because just the idea of marriage, because women are able to be, like I said, be independent. They don't need a man to give them validation or to give them value. They can be that on their own. And now you have women that earn more than some men as well too. And in those cases, men are not typically bonding or getting married with a woman because she's making a lot of money, because that's not usually what a man's motivation is when he's pursuing a woman. Not for her money, not for her credentials, not for her status in life. We're not. We're typically just not wired that way. But when women, they seem to think it's almost like a competition, and to an extent, I can understand that viewpoint, that it's like a competition, because when women have been without for so long, and the way society has been set up, it's not equal. So the more they fight to have equality, the more you're going to see these exacerbated qualities and characteristics in women that's kind of overcompensating for the fact that they haven't had a level playing field. So they're trying to get themselves to the point where you're not better than me. But sometimes in some people it comes out with, you're not better than me, but now I am better than you. And it shouldn't be that way. But it can seem that way when you're part of a society where you've had the dominant position, which men still have in this society, in so many different ways. But we have carved out some niches in our society where women do have the upper hand, where they are given the advantage, where they are given the benefit of the doubt. And I'm wondering, what is that benefit? What can you get outside of the legality of the marriage? What do you get in a marriage that you can't get in a non-marriage relationship? I see, we talk about the divorce rate. We talk about it's almost 50%. So somewhere, I guess, in the 40s or something like that. But then, so those are the people that actually went through with it and ended the marriage. Let's talk about the segment that remained married. Now let's look into that segment. What do we have? We have a segment in that full segment of married people who are married because of the children. Not because they still want to be together. They want to be married because they have the kids and they don't want to change the dynamic of that. And they think they're doing it for the kids. They want to keep them in a single. They want to keep them in a single household with both parents in it. That's what they want to do. That's the main motivation behind it. They don't want to get divorced because they want to stay together for the kids. And then, that's one part of the married people. Another part is the financial portion of it. One or both cannot survive the same way or be as comfortable without the other because of the financial support that you get from having two people in the household. Sometimes it's just one person that is supporting the household, and the other person isn't really happy in the household, but they don't think that they can do it on their own. So they stay. And they deal with whatever happens in that relationship, something that they wouldn't have dealt with if they were financially able to support themselves and be okay in that respect. You have that. That's also part of the marriage segment. Another part of the marriage segment is that you have people who've simply become comfortable enough in the sense that they are afraid of the change. They are afraid of the changing of the dynamic of what they've put their time into, and they just the concept of having a different existence now at this point is so uncomfortable for them that they fear that more than whatever issues they're having in the marriage that has them in an unhappy state being in that marriage. That's also part of that segment of people who are still married. You know? We also, I don't even want y'all to forget about it. We also have a segment of the married population that actually want to be married. They're happy. They love each other. If they have kids, they love the children and they love the whole family dynamic. And they are in it till the end, and they both want to be there for each other. Not any other reason, but they actually genuinely love and want to be with each other. That's not a large segment of that marriage segment either. You know, I've always said, maybe for the past, maybe 15, 20 years or so, and I just recently saw a post on social media a few days ago, and it brought up the concept of a renewal for your marriage, for your license and certificate there, where there's a certain amount of time that you're in this marriage, and afterwards it actually can expire and just dissolve. And I've always said, if you literally had that to happen, you would have a better idea in that larger section, or the 50% of the people that are still married, you'd actually get a better sense of the people who are married that want to be married. Because if you want to get married or want to continue to be married, once that expiration starts to come up, you will have two people that are willing to go and renew. They'll renew it, and they're in essence stating their intent to remain married. You probably have a small portion of those people who will just maybe, maybe not do it because they want to. Maybe they're forced into it or what have you. But it'll take effort on their part to continue. But then, I truly believe there will be quite a number of people in that group, in that segment, that would allow that marriage to be over, that license to be over. Now, will they move? Will they physically separate at that point? Who knows? Well, one thing's for sure, there's going to be quite a number of them that won't be married anymore. They won't go through that process of renewing their vows like that. Right? it's almost become a game these days, and you 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 see it. Men aren't typically walking around saying, "I want to be married. I'm looking to be married." They're looking to have someone and be there, but the marriage itself, like I said, some people see it as security, and a lot of times I'm looking around. It doesn't give you security. Being married doesn't keep a person. It doesn't. You have too many marriages where, yeah, they're married, but they have almost two separate lives in that marriage. It doesn't keep your partner faithful because we're married. I know differently. I've experienced differently. And it doesn't stop anyone from leaving. We see that. We see people that leave and they don't even get the divorce. They just leave. So the marriage wasn't holding them. Now they're estranged, husband and wife, because maybe the cost of divorce, just the actual money that needs to be put into the process of getting a divorce, they didn't want to do it or they couldn't do it, so they just remained married. I mean, I know my mom and dad, they were estranged for decades, still married, but lived two completely different lives. But you still hear talk about, hey, I still love my wife. I still love my husband. There was a sense of love there. Not quite sure how to categorize it based on the life that I was raised in and seen, and the kind of environment I come from, and seeing that as an example of a marriage. I've seen different examples of marriage, but close up and on a day-to-day basis from my household, that version of marriage was one that I knew I did not want to partake in. You know, not saying you can't have disagreements, or I mean, you can't be angry at each other, and one day you can't stand each other and the other day you're lovey-dovey. Though that's going to happen through the course of just life with anyone that you're around all the time. It's going to happen. You're not going to always love them every day. It's not going to happen. But when you get to a point to where it becomes hostile, it becomes toxic, violent even, once you get to that point in your union, there are some decisions to be made. And whether we stay together, that may be the last question you ask. Because first, you need to be addressing what the issues are to even get to the point to where you can ask, should we be together? That's just my take on it. But I truly believe that two people who want to be together will be together regardless of if they're married or not, regardless if there's a ceremony or not. But we've raised most of our daughters to have that concept of the wedding, and that's become embedded in their minds that they want that. And not really understanding what the reality of that is. So many people go into marriage just with their own concept of what that means, and find out they're living something totally different. So there's a conflict there, which also can give you some issues inside that marriage. If your concept going in is one thing and you're living something else, that can't be healthy for the marriage. And we have a lot of people that get married on emotion. It's how they feel, not the practicality of what's going on, but the emotion of what's going on. And as we all know, Emotions are fleeting. You can feel this way this moment. You can feel that way that moment. You know, so you have to, when you go into that contract, which is what it is, when you get married, that contract, you have to be more practical and critically think through, what will this union mean? What is my obligation to it? What is their obligation to me? What is our obligation to each other? You have to have that practical sit-down conversation and not just be, I love you too, I love you too. I don't want you to go anywhere. I don't want you to go anywhere. Yeah, when you're feeling good about a person, you don't want them to go anywhere. You want to stay right there. But as we go on this journey of marriage, I tell people, you go three ways as a couple. You go this way, you go that way, or you go this way. You have to know which way you and your partner are going. Are you guys just growing as individuals, having your journeys in the same space at the same time, but not necessarily together? Are you growing into two different peoples that are less and less and less and less compatible? Seen that plenty of times. The person that you were at 20 or 30, 40, whatever it is, ends up being a different person at 25, 35, 45. And you may not necessarily have the same interests that you did at the beginning of that union. You've evolved into a different person that may not include the desire for the partner that you have. They may have also grown into a different space. And now you're no longer compatible. And now that you're not compatible, you've been joined together already in this agreement, in this contract that keeps you guys together, keeps you guys linked. And how do you get out of that once you've, people say, invested the time? You know, so many people, they get into relationships and then if it doesn't work, they say, oh, I wasted my time. I invested all my time. Well, sure, you did invest time. You did share in this time with this person. Is it a waste because you didn't get the end result before you died that you wanted? That you're still not together? Did you learn anything through the time that you spent with this person? Have you grown in the time that you've been with this person? If you say that it was a waste of time, that is not the other person's fault. There are still some things that you're required to do as an individual with yourself that makes every day that you exist here be worthwhile and be going somewhere. It doesn't have to be tied to the other person for you to gain a benefit for your life. There are people who've been married, and once that marriage ended, they came out better individual people and realizing that the relationship that they're in is not one that works for the stage that they're in at that moment. And they've made the practical decision. It could have hurt. It could have not been comfortable, but they were both mature enough to understand that was a cool ride. We've learned a lot from each other. We've had some memories. We've had some learning experiences. Now, we're at another stage in life, and that requires me to go this way and you to go that way. Not even mad at you. Not mad at you at all. I appreciate it. It can go that way. A lot of times it may not, because we get into that space where it's it's not working, and we don't make a decision. We stay with it. And we stay with it so long to the point where you start to build resentment for the person. Because you're with someone you don't want to be. And the things that were so cute, the things that kind of got on your nerve a little bit and you laughed it off because you still had the loving feelings for them, now when they do it, you just can't stand them. You're looking at them, you got your face scrunched up, and you're nasty, like you had some nasty food or some stuff. Ugh. Now when they snore, it's just so annoying. Now you gotta go get on the couch. Now you gotta go into another room and go to sleep. But before, when they snored and you were in your happy feelings and everything, you just give them a nudge and you wake up the next morning. Boy, you was sure snoring. Boy, God, whew, you was snoring. Wasn't that bad. But now it's like nails on a chalkboard. Can't stand it. Now they chew bad and you can't stand to hear them. Stop all that damn smack. I can't stand to hear smack. And before you know it, you can't stand that person that you're with, but you haven't left. Kind of sucks. You don't want to get to the point where I kind of say you overstayed your welcome in a relationship. Once you overstayed your welcome in a relationship, it doesn't typically end good. It typically kind of goes sideways, and now you're fighting all the time. And you're fighting someone because you're not supposed to be in their presence. You've overstayed your welcome. You both should have went your separate ways and left in a healthier space. Now you're in a hurt place. You allowed yourself to get to that point, and you shouldn't. But then you have those people, the longer they're together, the closer they get. These are two people who are totally invested in each other. They've held hands and they've gone into this union knowing it's about the other person. Knowing that I'm not going to like you sometimes. But I'm going to grow into a person that can sit and talk to you, that can try to see your side of things, try to understand where you're coming from. I want to be the type of person that's willing to compromise with you, as long as you're willing to do the same with me. If you can go into the relationships that way, married or not, you have a higher chance of it working. But this idea of marriage either needs to go away totally in the current iteration of that, what that word is, and maybe come up with a new version of unions. One for this society and not the society we used to have. Because I tell you guys, women have value with or without you, the same way we do. And once we get a grasp of that, we can go into this on equal footing as people, not your status of life, not the things that you own or your possessions and things like that, but just as humans, just valuing each other as humans. If you're with someone and you want them to have something that's yours when you go, do the paperwork. Give them a percentage of it. Doesn't even have to be a court thing. Judge doesn't have to award this, that, the other because you separated. If you want them to have it, you have it. But at the same time, we're still in a situation where we still have the people that prey upon you. The woman that says, hey, I'm still working, I don't feel like doing this, I'm young, well, middle-aged, still childbearing years. I can find this guy, put it on him real good, get a baby, and I can get some of that, what that guy has. He might even marry me. And once he marries me, I know I got him. I know I got him. And then once I got him, I can go on about my business, have more than I left with. And it works like that for a number of people. And the guys, same situation, they're going to say, I left with less than I came with in this situation. Is it fair? No, it's not fair at all. But it's the reality that we're in. But I was just sharing my thoughts about this marriage. It was on my mind. I wanted to talk about it. And I want to hear from you. Do you think that marriage is outdated? Do you think people are getting married for the right reasons? I just want to know. Tell me what you think. For me, I can just tell you what I think, but hey, what does Zoe know? You know what I mean? So,
What does Zoe know?